And we're here today, and we took some time out to, chat with you about traumatic brain injuries and how we go about those cases in general, I guess is what we're looking for, and really getting from the attorney's perspective how you go about treating your clients with brain injury.
Yeah, so I think there are different approaches that certain lawyers take. Some lawyers like to involve neuropsychologists very early, just to have an intake and a proper intake to really see if there is a TBI, because the most challenging ones are those mild TBI cases.
Correct.
Where the person suffered a concussion, but maybe they didn't lose consciousness, or they were just dazed, but they hit their brain, or not even hitting their brain, but suffering what's called the whiplash.
Correct.
Because our brain has this liquid inside, right? And it moves. So if you have a very violent hit, like a rear end collision, or you trip and fall, even though you're not hitting your head to the ground, the brain inside the skull moves.
Yeah.
And sometimes these mild TBI cases are very challenging, and to make the intake and go about them, you need an expert to take a look at them.
100%.
So when I started working in this industry, I would go straight to a neurologist and have the neurologist do the assessment, and then have the imaging, MRI, VNG, EEG. But now I've noticed that certain lawyers like to have a neuropsychologist, and have that neuropsychologist assess the first, days, the first weeks, the first months after an injury.
Right.
And then also what I like to do is to talk to the client and talk to the family, because the client may think that everything is fine, but the significant other, the relatives, the daughter, son, they know that something changed. There was a before and after in terms of how that person is. So it's really on a case-to-case basis. But as a policy, I like to talk to the client first, talk to the circle that surrounds the client, and then if there is any indicia, any symptom that tells you there could be a traumatic brain injury, I like that client to see a proper expert to tell me, okay, this is actually a TBI case or not.
Looking for dedicated legal support? Contact Lathrop Law Firm at 760-723-9612 or check out www.lathroplawfirm.com.
Yeah, that's really good because most people just don't know where to start,
Right.
really. These people do look normal, and you can't necessarily always trust what your client is telling you is real, right? And so it is best in my circumstances of what I've seen on helping other attorneys is when they do talk to the family and the lay people around them, the lay witnesses, it really adds so much credibility to their story and their injury. And when other people can speak for them, it definitely makes a difference. So good job on doing that. Most, are in fear of, if you will, to get closer to their clients. But I think that's a huge thing to be able to show them that you are invested, you do care, and that you're doing that for them. So that's amazing. And yes, I agree that documenting these symptoms earlier on and the closest to that date of accident is best, because if it's not getting documented, it kind of looks like you're trying to throw something out of nowhere, right? And into it. But yes, it's key.
So when a client of mine comes to my office with an injury, I try to go over all the symptoms that the client is experiencing, and most, if not all of the times, when they suffer a brain injury, when these cases are mild, because a severe traumatic brain injury, you lose consciousness.
Those are the easy ones, if you will.
Right. Although the client is passing through a very hard time,
Sure.
but from a litigation perspective, those cases are clear cut, and it's a matter of how much, right? And not if the damage exists.
Right.
But when a client comes to you with an injury, with a rear end collision, a trip and fall case, I like to go over all of the symptoms that the client is experiencing, and I have a list, that cover the TBI symptoms, and I check each one of the symptoms that the client is experiencing, and sometimes those symptoms go away after a couple of weeks, a month, but sometimes they don't. And sometimes they even present weeks or months after the accident, because the brain is so complex. And you need, I personally think that an attorney that misses to address a TBI case is committing malpractice. You need to really make sure that your client is not forgiving the other side from claiming damages when they are experiencing a TBI. Because I call them a silent type of injury.
It is a silent
it messes
injury.
with your soul.
Invisible injury.
Right.
Yeah, it messes with your soul. I like to, absolutely, that's exactly what it's doing. Spirit is broken, right? When anytime you're in any kind of injury like that, right? You're going to go through some stress. You're going to go through some kind of, frequency, vibration difference, right? And then you're in that negative field. So how do we get these people well again? And that starts with the brain. And if your brain is off in those thoughts already, now you check on an injury to it. Now you're only getting it more complex, right? So, and these injuries, like you said, show up later. And, that acute phase is different for everybody. And so when it's still 6 months out and these people are still complaining of, not being able to remember, or their behavior is still off, or it could be this tiniest things that even their motor skills are just not there as what it was before, or their job is different now. They can't intake as well as they did before. Just different things that you wouldn't otherwise know just by looking at somebody. So it really is important to document those symptoms early on and continue every month. I tell other case managers and other people involved in the case to follow up with that client. Just because they're injured and 6 months have gone by, you haven't heard from them, follow up, because you never know.
Use your experts as much as you can. Get in touch with them, because they have so much knowledge that we lawyers that are not educated, in like university, medical school, we don't have the amount of knowledge that they have in terms of neurological injuries. So when you're doing a cross-examination of the other side's expert, you need to really work closely with your expert. And this is a neurologist, even the PT who is doing, I don't know, you see it in vestibular therapy, for example, or the neuropsychologist if you want to use one. Some lawyers don't like to use a neuropsychologist.
I'm a big advocate of them, because I've seen how they just do well with, that first step with what you're doing at documenting these symptoms. Okay, now that we know there is somebody that has potential injuries of traumatic brain injury, well, let's get the experts involved, and that's where you get a neurologist or a neuropsych, right? And you also could go even the imaging route first and have a neurologist order that, prescription for an imaging. And so through us, like TBI Analytics, where we offer this advanced neuroimaging and the correct imaging to measure that part of the brain, right? We're not just the structured brain image. We are taking a look at the white and gray matter, and we are looking at every fiber tract that is off. And it's going to only highlight if the person is injured. So it's not making anything up. It's AI driven. And now we are dependent on that now. Instead of having to worry about an expert cross-examination and different expert, now we're talking about quantitative evidence that's absolutely backed by AI.
Imaging right now is changing the game, because you have such an accurate view of what's happening inside the brain and inside the spine. But when it comes to brain injuries, what I was telling you before, that some lawyers don't like to use neuropsychologists, it's because imaging is so good now that they think that they don't need a neuropsychologist to tell you this is the injury,
Right.
Now, from a treating perspective, from a patient's perspective, I personally think that it's good to see a neuropsychologist when you suffer a brain injury, because even if you see that the injury is there in terms of the imaging, the neuropsychologist is going to find how this injury is affecting you in the little things.
Exactly.
The brain is so complex,
Yes.
and there are so many areas that it affects. There was this myth where if I hit my head, I'm going to be dumb. I'm going to be, I'm not going to be good for numbers anymore. But it's not
you
that.
You just don't know what it's going to control.
It could be your sleeping. It could be your anxiety.
Yep.
It could be so much. Your speaking.
The only provider out there that can correlate those findings of a brain image is a neuropsychologist.
Right.
Because even a neurologist cannot do that, right? Unless they have more specialty training on the treatment side of it. But really, it's the neuropsych that really peel those onion layers back on how were they performing before the injury, and now how is it affecting them after. And they really can dial it into, this lobe of the brain is showing injury through the DTI that we did. Oh, well, that makes sense because their motor skills are off and that's what it's controlling. It just goes hand in hand. And when you have both image and correlation and you got the documentation ahead, it's
even for the more severe TBI cases. So the way that I like to tell this is, you have a big ship, a boat, and you're in the middle of the ocean, and all of a sudden your boat sinks, and you're in the middle of the ocean when you suffer this big injury. The first months you want to make it to the shore, right? But once you're in the shore and you're standing on your feet, there are more things happening. So that's when you start using these experts that work a little bit more in detail.
And fine-tune it.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And to really discover what is this person needing as far as treatment goes. Is it neurocognitive? Is it behavioral? Is it, motor skills that needs to be, trained again? So you wouldn't really know that unless you're really spending a full evaluation with this person and dialing in how they doing on a day-to-day basis. So
and the other side, what they do is trying, we call it the octopus defense. They just throw ink,
anything,
and try to tell you that this was caused by any other thing. And while it's true that some mental issues may come from other things, because it's not a black and white situation, someone had a bad childhood, and that
they could already have mental issues going on,
but that doesn't mean that the incident didn't cause a change
that
in their life, and that change doesn't have value. So
it actually only exasperated it most likely, and it's even worse, like an eggshell type of injury.
Basically that's the situation. And thankfully the law protects someone in this situation, making those people more susceptible, and you're entitled to be taken to the situation you were, like the status, the position you were before the injury. And I like to call it like when you see a window that is cracked and someone comes and breaks it, they need to pay the window because the window crack was able to work. Right, with that crack, crack.
It was fine.
But when someone breaks it, maybe that same hit that broke the window wouldn't have broke the window if it wasn't for the crack. But in this case, the crack is there, and that hit
makes perfect sense.
So
that's really good. And
looking for dedicated legal support? Contact Lathrop Law Firm at 760-723-9612 or check out www.lathroplawfirm.com.
I was going to say, with these people, if we can get them the treatment while they're in our, in a sense, care, right, then that's the best thing we can do for them. I know not every case warrants the ability to do that, but when you do have that, it really helps these people get on the right track, because if you don't take care of them, early enough, it could lead into a worse injury. And so I like the analogy I use is the cancer. If you don't treat the cancer, it's just going to get worse. It gets worse. And that's how these people are when they're walking around saying you're normal and you're not. It's leading them down a depression road or a anxiety-driven road or whatever, right? And then it's just goes into many different other spiral things. But that's what's the beauty about having these advanced now neuroimaging, and it's changing the game, because now whatever octopus arm they throw at us, right, we can say, nope, we did that technique, we did that sequence of a brain MRI that shows if its person is if this injury is due to Alzheimer's or something neurodegenerative. We can see that in the imaging that we're doing, all in one shot, right? We don't have to go back and test this person again for this sequence. We don't have to send them back on an MRI for this sequence. We can do it all in one, so that when that image spits out, there's no other differential diagnosis that you're going to need in order to determine if this person has a mild traumatic brain injury, because we're using all the sequences in one.
Yeah, what I can say is that technology is definitely helping the patients, the plaintiff lawyers, to advocate on behalf of their clients and really find the root issue of why they are dealing with all of these things. And when it comes to showing or exposing the case, in front of a jury, when you it's not you who is telling the jury, it's not your expert or the treating doctor who's telling the jury or the relatives, but it's objective evidence, and you're able to contrast and compare the objective evidence you have there with the clinical findings that these experts are giving. That's basically you're telling the jury, this is how the case is,
right.
And you don't need anything else, because you have the imaging, which is objective, is a machine, you're not manipulating it,
right.
And then you have the clinical correlation and the science behind. And when it comes to the science, now with all of this AI, all of these pages that help you find the articles, find the science that supports your position.
And the research for all the normative databases that are out there that we can compare these people to, actually, and gender, age, and matched, right? So we can actually have solid evidence that shows these people are not normal anymore. And it's really, we're at that precipice now that we can utilize AI in the best way for these people to get the treatment they need. Yeah. It's really a neat time to be, trying cases right now. Yeah. And it's also the best time to be, helping these people that have, these brain injuries. You'd be surprised just under, the caseloads that people have that they don't even know that their clients have one, because they don't understand that there are technologies out there that can identify that these people do, or at least supports the case of possible traumatic brain injury, right? The diagnosis of that.
Yeah, it correlates with I was listening to John Romano. I don't know if you know him.
Yes.
Yesterday he was speaking about the value of cases and how a case that may seem like it doesn't have any value, when you start digging into looking at it from other perspective, spending time with the client, with the family, you start finding things that you didn't see before. And all of a sudden, a case that could seem very small from the outside, from afar, now when you're close, involved, you're able to see that it's a huge case that changed the life of this person. And you have so many tools to prove that. Of course, nobody wants to exaggerate. And this is something that I tell my clients always when we start, a attorney-client relationship. I'm not the attorney that is going to file a frivolous lawsuit.
Right.
I'm gonna do what's fair for you, and I'm going to try to maximize what you actually deserve. So let's try to find the tools to prove this. We're gonna do it the best way possible. And nowadays, with all the science, with AI, that I don't like to say that it's doing the work for us. It's helping us to do our work faster. Absolutely. Because you need to check, you need to review, you need to always see what AI is giving you. If you're looking for any peer-reviewed study, they're going to point you to the right peer-reviewed studies. Maybe sometimes they will point you to the wrong one, but you save so much time trying to look for this information, and all of a sudden you have it after a few clicks. You have it right there. All you have to do is read it. Yep. And make sure that that's actually what AI is telling you it is, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just go over it. Quality control, right?
Yeah. But you have to do the work, because I don't know if you heard the story of that lawyer in in New York.
No, tell me.
So he used ChatGPT to write a motion. I don't know what type of pleading document it was, and he cited a case that didn't exist.
Oh dear.
And the other attorney, defendant or plaintiff, told the judge, I tried to find this case and I couldn't find it. And the judge was like, okay, counsel, where did you get this case from? And the attorney told the judge, well, I took it from ChatGPT. And I don't know if he got disbarred, but
I can't believe he would actually admit that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I mean,
okay.
That's what they call hallucinations. You know,
Yeah.
the AI hallucinates sometimes. So
Yeah.
you need to be very careful with how you use it. But it's a tool.
It's a tool.
And human beings are still useful. You know.
Right. Yes. Absolutely. We're actually, you know, we got the emotion side to it that we can convey. So that helps. And yeah, definitely. I think, well, from what I've seen and what I'm working with out there, it sounds like you're doing a really good job for your clients. I appreciate what you're doing out there. And I know you are a hard worker, one of the hardest that I've seen.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
I appreciate that.
And and if you could tell us your story real quick on how did you why did you want to become a lawyer, and tell us where you came from. And
I'll try to do it to tell it as quick as possible, because it's a long story.
It's a long story. Okay, the cliff.
I didn't know I wanted to be a lawyer. I was always good writing, you know, reading. I like reading books. But I thought I was gonna do something more like related to music and journalism, or maybe like literature. I was very enchanted about the literary, you know, aesthetics, that type of things.
Yeah.
But I am also addicted to extreme sports all my life. I grew up being a snowboarder.
Okay.
I live close to the mountains, and the adrenaline.
Yes,
I like the
adrenaline rush. You're adrenaline junkie.
Yeah. So I started down in Chile. I went to college, and over there you just go straight to your major. You know, whatever you're gonna your profession. That's what you do. You go straight. So you go to med school right away out of high school. But in that case, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I went to something like the undergrad here, you know, the bachelor's degree in human sciences. And I had my first law class. And it was a law class where you had to perform standing in front of the whole class. And I loved that adrenaline, you know, of being there, standing and learning something and having to perform in front of the judge. And that was like,
that's an adrenaline rush.
Felt fulfilling to me. And then the things that I was learning, I could use them right away. So I'm gonna start doing this, you know. And I finished law school in Chile. I became a lawyer, worked for several years down there.
Wow.
And then I came to the US, which was in the back of my head because I'm dual citizen. And I went to UCLA, and then I passed the bar.
Wow.
And then I became an attorney, and I started working in PI. So from being a real estate lawyer down there, I had a little period working, representing victims of domestic violence. More than representing, I was making sure we were working for the government. And we were making sure that these temporary restraining orders that were dictated by the courts were actually complied with.
Wow.
So we were doing some phone calling, you know, to the victims, and we were also doing some visits. And during that time, I had this motorbike, and one of the attorneys of my group also had a motorbike. So we would go all over Santiago, getting into these like very bad neighborhoods, visiting these victims of domestic violence. That when I look back, I think to myself, how did I do this? Because I could have gotten in a lot of trouble there. You know,
it's like
they could have showed me. You know, you're coming to my house to check if I'm with my wife or with my girlfriend. You know, I was doing that.
Wow.
And it felt so good to get the feedback from all of these victims, feeling grateful about what we were doing. But over there, what the Americans, the U.S. doesn't exist really. You know, what we do to help people,
Right.
You can't do that
They don't have the same
down there.
resources. Yeah.
People don't have access to justice. They don't have attorney fees there. You know,
Right.
there are so many things here that you can do, and you still can make a living out of. Whereas now, I mean, forever in Chile, you just can't.
No.
If you represent just people, you would need to represent thousands and thousands of people, and you have to charge them by the hour, or you know,
Right.
and you don't feel good charging someone that doesn't have the money to pay for your services. It may be a
Yeah.
little bit like
It's
criminal
difficult.
defense type
Yeah,
of work
sure.
here, you know.
Yeah.
So then I moved to the U.S. and I started working in PI with my old boss, the first law firm I worked for, and I fell in love with being a trial lawyer, being
Yeah.
a plaintiff lawyer, dealing with people, being able to help and get yourself in court. And all of a sudden, the attorneys that I saw only in the movies, that was me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it felt awesome. It
Yes.
felt fascinating. So
Looking for dedicated legal support? Contact Lathrop Law Firm at 760-723-9612 or check out www.lathroplawfirm.com.
See that.
then I opened my own firm, and here I am in my second year with my own firm. I got my
Amazing.
first cases the first year, so since we work on a contingency, it's hard
Yeah.
because you don't see money until the case settles or until you get a verdict, a decision.
Right.
But once a few cases start settling, then the machine starts moving, and you have to just trust in yourself and do it.
Yes.
So yeah, things have been working
Yes.
great, and
Yes.
I never stop learning and doing things. So
Yep.
it's been great.
Yeah, you're doing awesome. I see you at all these conferences, always learning. There's always learning to be learned, right?
Right.
There is never an end to that. So, well, it was wonderful talking
Thank
with you today. Thank you for taking the time. I had
Thank you so much.
such a good time with you.
Likewise. Thank you, Amelia. Thank
You're
you so much.
welcome.